I was originally planning a different topic for today. When I was putting my notes together a week ago, I was planning on a security walk around the world, viewing all the security trouble spots and what might happen in those areas. But given the events of the last week, I decided this weekend to throw away my notes and put together a different set of notes focused on Russia and Ukraine. To understand what's happening in Ukraine today, you have to understand what's been happening in Russia for the last few decades. And so, in a sense, the title of my talk could be Security Issues in Russia, Yesterday and Today, with a big focus on Ukraine, of course. But yesterday, I'm going all the way back to the Cold War. And during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union each had 10,000 nuclear weapons on high alert aimed at the other country, ready to go off in literally minutes' notice. So these weapons were poised to destroy the other country and incidentally to destroy the whole world in the process. Now, both countries recognized this was a disastrous outcome, as they both tried to find ways to avoid that outcome, and the way they each found was called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. That is, each nation had the ability to destroy the other nation, and therefore they reasoned the other nation would not start a war. Well, MAD worked. That is, we did avoid a nuclear holocaust. But it was as much by good luck as by good management. Let me focus a little on the good luck issue. All during the Cold War, all during this period of MAD, there were two great dangers associated with MAD. One is that in spite of the best planning, a war could start by miscalculation, or a war could start by accident. And those are very theoretical considerations because they didn't happen. But I must tell you, they were never theoretical to me. I'm going to share with you two incidents in my own life in which those two dangers became very, very real and very personal. The first was in 1962, a long time ago. I got a phone call from the Deputy Director of CIA asking me to come back to Washington to help him work on a problem. And I told him I'd be happy to do that. I'd rearrange my schedule and see him the following week. He said, "No, it's urgent. I'd like you to come back on the night flight." So I did, and the next morning he showed me the pictures taken by U-2 of Russian missile deployments in Cuba. That was my first inkling of what came to be called the Cuban Missile Crisis. For the next 8 days, I worked basically day and night with a small team analyzing all the data that was being collected on Cuba and having a report ready for President Kennedy first thing in the morning so that he could base his decisions that morning on what had happened the day before. And to this day, I believe we avoided a nuclear holocaust by as much as good luck as by good management. Some years later, I went into the government as the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. This was in the late 70s. And while I was in that job, I got a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. As I sleepily picked up the telephone, I heard the voice on the other line identify himself as the general who was the watch officer at the North American Air Defense Command. He was calling to tell me that his computers were showing 200 ICBMs on the way from the Soviet Union to the United States. You get a phone call like that, it really doesn't seem theoretical at all. It seems very real and very personal. Of course, that was a false alarm. It was one of 3 or 4 false alarms that I know of. On that one, he was calling me because he was in hopes that I could help him figure out over the telephone what had gone wrong with his computers so that he'd have an explanation the next morning for the president. I was not able to do that. It took us several days, actually, to figure out what had gone wrong. What had gone wrong was, under the general terminology of human error, an operator, when he set up the computer that day, instead of putting in the tape for the operating system of the computer, he put in a training tape. And so the computer was showing a very realistic scenario of an attack. Errors do happen. And therefore, the possibility of a nuclear war by accident was always very real.